The second piece of mail that I received today was addressed to me in my own handwriting. I looked at it. I was like, that's my writing with my name and my address. And it was a postcard that I filled out myself. And here is what I wrote on this postcard. What is your next step? Do whatever it takes to get 1,000 plus Creative Impostor downloads per month by December 1st, 2016. Who do you want to be? A resource for creative women to feel empowered by. What fears or dreams do you want to conquer? Being successful, being seen, being heard. So, do you want to make a guess as to how many of those 3 intentions came true? You're listening to the Creative Impostor episode number 57. Welcome to the Creative Impostor. I'm Andrea Klunder, your host, and it is 2018. Happy New Year. It has been a little bit since I have been here on the podcast with you, and that is because the end of the year was insane. I have been teaching my high school podcasting program, and we launched our second season of Power Your Story podcast, which I'm very excited about. There's some really good episodes there in season 2. And so there was the end of the session deadline to get all those podcasts edited and mixed and curated and posted. And then I also was wrapping up a digital journalism program that I teach at the high school level. And so we were getting all of our videos and podcasts for that program for in-house media wrapped and edited and published. And I also had some private client projects coming due, and it was also the holidays, and it was just probably not the best scheduling, but needless to say, I did not have a lot of time to focus on producing the Creative Impostor. And so I thought that I should start out the new year fresh with a solo episode just to check in with all of you and see how you're doing. What are your creative intentions, desires, visions for the new year? I'd love to know, and you can let me know by joining the Creative Impostor Facebook group, which you can find at thecreativeimpostor.com/FB for Facebook. And of course, it'll be linked in the show notes for this episode at thecreativeimpostor.com, episode number 57. And comment, let me know what you're up to in this year and how we can support you. I have been working on creating my vision for 2018, and I've been thinking a lot about this idea that if we keep doing things the same way we've always done them, we'll always get the same result versus trying something new for a different result versus sticking with something that you've already started. There's a lot of sort of muddiness around whether you should start fresh, do something new, take a different direction, try a different tactic, or whether you should stick with and continue to grow in one particular direction. And I think I have a tendency to be the try something new, go this direction, throw something else at the wall kind of personality in terms of my creative work and my business and my profession. And so there's this part of me that's saying, whoa, hold back, stick with what's working, keep going, keep pressing forward. And then there's this other part of me that's like, but you could do this, but this part isn't working, but this part hasn't gotten there. So here's why I'm saying this. There are so many different directions that I could focus in this year and so many different directions I could take things. And today, as I'm recording this, it's January 2nd, and a lot of things are just kind of being thrown my way as sort of these little signposts or these little mini oracles. So number one, I've been really struggling financially here at the end of the year. I have some payments that were late for work I've already done, and I've had some unexpected expenses, plus the general expenses that always seem to be more than they should at the holiday time, plus some time off of client work around the holiday time. And in general, I've just been kind of a little bit stretched for cash, to be honest. And there's one check in particular that I was waiting for, because it's probably like one single solitary check that is about, well, let's just say it's for an entire semester's worth of work. And I thought that I was going to get it at the front end of that work. And so I had budgeted in that way. And the truth was they did not intend to send it till the back end of that work when all the work was completed. Anyways, I've been waiting. And today the check arrived in the mail and it felt like a massive victory. It was hugely uplifting. One great piece of mail. The second piece of mail that I received today was addressed to me in my own handwriting. I looked at it. I was like, that's my writing with my name and my address. And then I saw the return label from someone named Nikki Nigl, who has been on this podcast before. She's one of the first people I interviewed for this show. And we revisited her interview last year in episode 38. And I don't know if Nikki is still doing this thing, but a long while back, I attended one of Nikki's events. I know that she's still doing the About Women events in Chicago. I just don't know if she's doing this one particular thing associated with those events, whereby she gave out a postcard that said, Act, Be, Conquer. And it was a postcard that I filled out myself. And the prompts were as follows. Act. What is your next step? Be. Who do you want to be? Conquer. What fears or dreams do you want to conquer? So I filled it out, put it in an envelope, sealed the envelope, addressed it to myself, and handed it back to Nikki. And everyone at this event had the opportunity to do this. And Nikki said, at some point in the future, I will mail this card back to you. She's like, I'm not going to read them. I'm not going to open them. I'm not going to do anything with them. I'm just going to hang on to them. And I don't know when it'll be. It could be a month from now. It could be 2 months from now. It could be a year from now. This postcard that I wrote for myself is dated June 21st, 2016. That is a long while ago, friends. June 21st, 2016. So that would be, let's see, I launched my podcast in October of 2015. So 8 months after I launched my show, which is now more than 2 years old. And here is what I wrote on this postcard. What is your next step? Do whatever it takes to get 1,000 plus Creative Impostor downloads per month by December 1st, 2016. Who do you want to be? A resource for creative women to feel empowered by. What fears or dreams do you want to conquer? Being successful, being seen, being heard. So, do you want to make a guess as to how many of those 3 intentions came true? Number 1, do whatever it takes to get 1,000 plus Creative Impostor downloads per month by December 1st, 2016. Did it happen? Absolutely not. It is now 13 months later than that deadline, and I still don't quite have 1,000 downloads per episode per month on my show. Number 2, be a resource for creative women to feel empowered by. Did it happen? Ding, ding, ding. I get messages from listeners and from members of the Chicago Women's Creative Collective and from members in the Facebook group all the time telling me how empowering my podcast is or how it inspired them. And so, yes, I would say that is definitely happening. Number 3, being successful, being seen, being heard. Has that happened in the past 18 months or so? Ding, ding, ding. Yes, it is. I've definitely had to do a lot of work on my definition of success and how I measure that. But I do believe that I have more visibility, more success, and a lot more people are hearing me than ever before. And a lot of that is largely due to this podcast. So 2 out of 3. How do I feel when I look at this postcard? Want to take a guess? Well, actually, right now, I'm feeling pretty good about it as I'm talking to you. But when I first looked at it, the first thing I read was do whatever it takes to get 1,000+ Creative Impostor downloads per month by December 1st, 2016. And I'm so far away from that goal. And that was a goal from like over a year ago. It felt pretty bad. And it's one of those things where a lot of times we have a tendency to fixate and focus on the negative rather than the other 2 goals, which have been really successful. And I think one of the reasons for that is an obsession with numbers. So this 1,000+ downloads per episode per month, that's not just a random arbitrary number that I pulled out of thin air. That is a number that a podcasting coach who I highly respect and admire had given me because I had done a consultation with her about what it would take to get sponsors for my show. You may or may not know, you may or may not have heard me say this before, but podcasting is not as easy as it may sound. It's also not rocket science, but it can be really time-consuming to do a quality job consistently on your show. And it does take a fair amount of my creative work time, and it would be really nice to have a more sustainable paycheck, and it would be even better if that more sustainable paycheck could come from doing something like producing this podcast. So one of the ways that podcasters make money from their shows are by having sponsors. And I'm sure if you listen to a lot of podcasts, you've heard other shows that are sponsored. And I have had 1 or 2 sponsors on here, but they are mostly sponsors who are people that I know really well and are really integrated into the community, or they're more like affiliates, which means they don't pay me anything to promote their product or service unless somebody purchases or signs up for that product or service. So before, you have probably heard me mention Audible, which is great for audiobooks, but I don't make a penny from Audible unless somebody signs up using my affiliate link, which no one ever has. So I have never made a penny off of that. And there have been a few other links like that. And one of the things that this consultant does is that she works with clients who are podcasters to help them find sponsors. So she's sort of like an agency, and she takes a little cut for helping find and place those sponsored spots. And so that was an idea that I was exploring for a while. And she had said that really it's, unless you have a very specific, super niche audience for your podcast, it's pretty hard to get sponsorships to be effective unless you are getting at minimum 1,000 downloads per episode per month. So that was the goal that I was shooting for so that I could experiment with doing paid sponsorships. Now, my numbers have been increasing, and I feel really good about that, but it's been a really slow build, really slow growth. And that is because I haven't really spent a lot of time or effort on marketing or promoting. Everything has kind of been word of mouth and through my local community in Chicago and through the communities and networks of my guests, which is great. Like, that's the way I love to promote my show. It's just not fast. I don't have a Facebook ads budget. I don't even know how to do Facebook ads. And I don't have a huge mailing list. And here's the thing about obsession with numbers. Numbers are like the easiest way that we have to measure things, but they're not always the biggest indicator of success. Not only are my numbers for my podcast downloads not 1,000+ per episode per month, but they've even gone down a little bit. Why have they gone down a little bit recently? It is because the measure by which downloads of podcasts are being assessed has been changing. The standard, the process, the software, the way in which downloads are counted. A download loosely means every time your episode is downloaded or requested. So you could download this episode to your phone and never listen to it, and that technically would count as a download. But The tricky thing is you can also stream this episode. And if you stream this episode and never download it to your phone, that also would count as a download. But sometimes, streaming gets interrupted, like your connection changes, or you switch to a new tower, or you go off Wi-Fi and go on your extended network, things like that. Or you start listening to a show and then you stop listening to it because you have to do something, then you continue listening to it. Well, apparently what was happening in the past was that each time that happened, it was counting as a new download. So one person listening to the show could have counted as like 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 downloads. So we were seeing some inflated numbers all along. And now they've changed the way those downloads are being measured and counted. And a lot of podcasters have seen a huge drop in their numbers, which feels disheartening, but it doesn't really mean anything except that you didn't have as many people listening to your show as you thought you did. It doesn't change anything about the reality of your show or the amount of engagement that you are or are not getting from your listeners. So it's kind of a weird thing. And it just made me realize that those 1,000 downloads per month per episode really are kind of arbitrary, which doesn't help me get sponsors or money, but just kind of puts things in perspective. Another thing that just happened related to numbers has to do with the Chicago Women's Creative Collective, my meetup group. So if you are in Chicago, I hope that you already are a member of the meetup group. And if you're not, that's okay too. This is a group that I created in Chicago for creative women back in 2012, before I even had the podcast. And I designed this group as a way for women who were doing creative work, whether full-time or not, professionally or as a hobby, could get together and share what they were working on, like practice their monologue or show a rough edit of a video or whatever, and get feedback and support and have a fun social time around that. And that it would be interdisciplinary. So it wouldn't just be a writing group or just be a theater group or just be a filmmakers group. We would get a lot of different input and support. And that group has grown and grown and grown and grown and grown. And one thing that the platform of Meetup is really good for is attracting new people who have similar interests in your geographic location to your group. And as such, we have had over 1,100 people since 2012 join the group. Now, we do not have 1,100 active people in the group. We probably have a solid 20 to 30 with varying degrees of activity and participation, which I think is a pretty solid number for a local community that, again, I do very little promotion or marketing for. But I wanted to grow that. I wanted to increase the engagement levels. And so I've been strategizing what I'm going to do in 2018, changing up some of the events. I hired a very super part-time assistant to help me with emails and communications and community building. And I created these brand new Creative Collective studio memberships, which one of the studio membership tiers that it's available is an online only tier. So I had this vision for 2018 that not only would I continue to offer the in-person networking meetup, I don't like that word networking. Not only would I offer the in-person meetups, I would also create some online meetups via video conference so that you, if you are not in Chicago and not local, could become a part of our community more face-to-face by joining the online studio membership. And then my local Chicago people and my global people could all come together and we could create this really fun, cohesive, creative, collaborative community. It's a lot of C's. And I was super excited about this. And I was going to send a big email and roll out some of the new stuff for my members on January 1st. And I logged into my Meetup account. And lo and behold, instead of 1,100 members, I had 77. How did I go from 1,100 to 77 overnight? Well, Meetup was recently acquired by WeWork, and they're changing the way they do their platform. And so I do charge a small, tiny amount of membership dues every month. And it used to be that you could stay in the group and you could still get emails and see events and get communications without paying the dues. But then once you wanted to sign up for something, then you would get prompted to pay dues. And they decided to get rid of that setting, which I knew they were going to do, but I didn't know when. And so everyone in the group who had not paid dues got bumped from the meetup and put on this mysterious pending payment list, which I cannot email. I cannot communicate with the people on that list. Not only that, but someone at Meetup made a mistake of some kind. I'm guessing, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt right now, which is that some people who have paid also got put on that pending payment list. Whoops. So I also cannot reach out to them, except that some of them are also in the Facebook group, so I can reach out to them via Facebook. I freaked out. I'll be honest. It really threw me off. That was the first thing. Before I even had breakfast, I discovered this huge decrease in the numbers of my members and the fact that I could not communicate with over 1,100 people who I used to be able to communicate with. Whether those 1,100 people ever are going to be active or not, sort of not the point, or it is the point. I freaked out. Where did all my people go? So I sat down and started thinking of a strategy and started looking around on forums to see if anyone else was having this problem. What can we do? What are the solutions? And I realized that, you know what? It's not about the inflated size of numbers. It is about the engagement, the core people, the people who are committed, the people who are showing up. It is quality, not quantity. Now, we do need to fix the problem where they bumped the paid people to that pending list. For sure, we need to fix that, and I'm waiting for customer service to get back to me about that one. But in terms of the people who are not engaging, so what? They were not part of our community. Anyway, that was a false, inflated number, just like those podcast download numbers. And none of that, 77 versus 1,100, none of that has anything to do with the effectiveness of the group and my level of success as a facilitator for that group and as a resource for creative women to feel empowered by, which is what was on my card. So I guess what all of this is to say is that today, January 2nd, started the Sacred Intention Challenge in Charlotte. Elea, who has also been on this podcast, in her Facebook group, which you can still join. And the Sacred Intention Challenge is something that I did at the beginning of last year with Charlotte that really helped put some things into perspective and clarify my intention and my focus for the year. And so I'm doing it again this year. And the first step on the first day, which was today, is to put your birth date into this online calculator that she has on her website. And it will tell you which tarot card from the major arcana is your guide for the year and for this Sacred Intention Challenge. And then you can sort of interpret what that means about your stage of growth for this particular year. And I put it in and I got the Tower. You may or may not know anything about tarot or only just the little bit that you've experienced with me through this podcast. The Tower is an intense card. The Tower is an intense card. And the picture on her website from the deck that's featured on her website is this tall tower on a jagged cliff with a nighttime sky and clouds, and lightning is striking the top of the tower, and there's flames coming out of the windows, and people are falling or fleeing or being thrown out of the tower. I have 2 different tarot decks, so I pulled those tower cards out, and there's lightning and smoke and fire and things being turned topsy-turvy and breaking apart and being unstable. And I could have looked at this card as my guide for the year and been like, oh, hell. But instead, I feel energized by this card. I feel like it's telling me that this is going to be the time where a lot of old, unstable structures that I thought I was building correctly are going to come crashing down, that we're going to clear away a lot of stuff that just isn't leading anywhere or just isn't right. It's going to be a take no prisoners, fiery, electric kind of year, and I am ready for it. What kind of year are you going to have? Are you going to be ruled by fear? Are you going to be stuck in old patterns and habits, doing the same thing that you did in 2017, waiting for some kind of different result? Or are you going to make a shift? And how are you going to do it? What direction are you going to go? And how are you going to make sure that you have the support that you need to make that shift? So the new formula that I've been working on for measuring success for your creative work and lifestyle looks like this: self-awareness plus self-expression plus intentional community. And that is the strong foundation that I am going to build from this year. Self-awareness, learning about yourself, studying yourself, getting clear, using practices like meditation or yoga or tarot or working with a coach. Self-expression, finding some way to get your voice out there, to be heard, to be seen, whether that's starting a podcast or writing or performing or teaching. An intentional community. That could be an in-person offline community or an online community or both or a hybrid. And that is what I am offering through the 2018 Creative Collective studio memberships. So regardless of what I've said about Meetup and whether we're going to continue to use that platform, the studio memberships are still available and you can get signed up through January 15th. Those are memberships that are available to you to connect with our community, either in person in Chicago or online or both. And you can learn more about them at thecreativeimpostor.com/studio memberships. If you're not quite ready for that just yet, I encourage you to come on over and join the Creative Impostor Facebook group and check out what it's all about and let us know what you are up to creatively this year so that we can all move forward together. This episode was mixed by Edwin Ruiz of Mondo Machine. Our theme music, as always, is by Jovia Armstrong. I thank you so much for listening, and I am wishing you a whole year filled with a strong foundation of self-awareness, self-expression, and intentional community for your creative life.